A person with $100,000 is closer to becoming a millionaire than a person with $0 is to reaching $100,000. That sounds obvious, but what most people don't realize is that the hardest part of building wealth isn't becoming a millionaire. It's reaching that first $100,000. Most people think the first $100,000 is hard because they don't earn enough money. But that's not the real reason. In fact, there are people earning six figures who never reach $100,000 in savings or investments. And there are people with average incomes who get there years earlier. So what's the difference? Why does one person seem stuck financially for years while another slowly builds momentum and eventually reaches a point where money starts working for them? The answer has very little to do with intelligence, luck, or even income. It has everything to do with the hidden challenge that almost nobody talks about. And once you understand it, you'll see why the first $100,000 feels so difficult and why the next $100,000 often comes much faster. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever saved money for months only for an unexpected expense to wipe out your progress? Maybe your car broke down. Maybe you had to help a family member. Maybe an emergency showed up at exactly the wrong time. It feels like every time you take 2 steps forward, life pushes you 1 step back. And that's exactly where most people get stuck. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Tem. On this channel, we break down money, wealth, investing, and the habits that help ordinary people build extraordinary financial lives. So if that's something you're interested in, consider subscribing. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The biggest obstacle to reaching your first $100,000 isn't what most people think. It's not investing. It's not finding the perfect side hustle. It's not even earning more money. The biggest obstacle is staying in the game long enough. Because in the beginning, financial progress feels invisible. Imagine trying to push a car that has been sitting still for years. The first few seconds require enormous effort. You're pushing with all your strength, but the car barely moves. That's exactly what building wealth feels like at first. You work hard. You save money, you make sacrifices, and yet your financial life looks almost the same. Your account grows slowly. Your investments barely move. Nothing feels exciting. And because nothing feels exciting, many people quit. Not because they're lazy, not because they're incapable, because they stop believing their effort is making a difference. And honestly, who can blame them? When someone spends months saving and only sees a small increase in their net worth, it's easy to wonder whether any of it is worth it. But here's something most people never realize. The early stage of wealth building is not designed to reward you financially. It's designed to test you psychologically. Think about it. When you're trying to lose weight, you don't see dramatic results after 3 days. When you're learning a language, you don't become fluent after 1 week. When you're building a business, you don't become successful after your first customer. The beginning always feels slow. Wealth is no different. Now, let's talk about something that surprises a lot of people. Income alone doesn't solve this problem. Many people believe that if they could just double their income, everything would change. And yes, earning more helps, but income is only one piece of the puzzle. There are people earning $30,000 a year who consistently save money, and there are people earning $150,000 a year who are living paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because wealth isn't determined by how much money enters your life. It's determined by how much stays. The truth is that every income level comes with new temptations. When people earn more, they often upgrade everything. A better car, a bigger apartment, more subscriptions, more expensive habits, more things to maintain. Suddenly, the extra income disappears. Not because they made bad decisions, because nobody taught them that increasing income and increasing wealth are 2 different goals. One makes you look rich, the other makes you become rich. And that's a very important distinction. Now, here's where many people make a mistake. They become obsessed with finding the perfect investment. They spend hours researching stocks, crypto, real estate, and market predictions. But they ignore the most powerful factor in reaching your first $100,000, their saving power. Imagine two people. The first person earns an average return on their investments, but consistently invests $500 every month. The second person earns amazing returns, but only invests $50 every month. Who wins? Most of the time, the first person. Because before your money can grow significantly, you need enough money invested in the first place. That's why the first phase of wealth building isn't about becoming a financial genius. It's about creating financial capacity. And that's not nearly as exciting as chasing the next hot investment, but it's what works. Now let's talk about the turning point, because eventually something changes. And this is the moment many people never reach. At first, every dollar comes from your effort. You work, you earn, you save. That's it. But over time, your money starts contributing. Maybe your investments earn a few $100s, then a few thousand, then even more. At first, it feels insignificant. Then one day, you notice something strange. Your money made more in a month than it used to make in an entire year. And that's when things begin to accelerate. This is why people often say the second $100,000 is easier than the first. Not because you've become lucky, not because the rules changed, because you finally have momentum. And momentum is powerful. Think about riding a bicycle. Starting requires effort. Balancing requires effort. Pushing the pedals requires effort. But once you're moving, staying in motion becomes much easier. The same thing happens with money. But there's another reason the first $100,000 is so difficult. And it has nothing to do with math. It has everything to do with identity. Most people focus on changing their income. Very few focus on changing their habits. Yet habits are what determine whether wealth stays or disappears.
Someone can receive a massive raise and still struggle financially. Someone can win the lottery and eventually go broke. We've seen it happen countless times. Because money amplifies existing behavior. If someone lacks discipline with $1,000, they'll often lack discipline with $100,000. If someone has strong financial habits with little money, they'll usually have strong financial habits with more money. This is why the journey to your first $100,000 changes you. It teaches patience. It teaches delayed gratification. It teaches consistency. It teaches you to think differently from the average person, and those lessons become assets of their own. Now, here's the surprising advantage most people ignore. Time. Not because of some magical formula, but because time allows small actions to become meaningful. Many people underestimate what happens when they consistently save, invest, learn, and improve for years. They expect dramatic results in months, but wealth rarely works that way. The people who succeed are often not the smartest. They're the ones who stay consistent long enough to see results, while everyone else is constantly starting over. That's a powerful lesson, because starting over is expensive. Every time you quit, you lose momentum. Every time you abandon a plan, you go back to zero. The winners aren't necessarily moving faster, they're simply moving without stopping. So how can you reach your first $100,000 faster? First, focus on increasing the gap between what you earn and what you spend.
Not through extreme sacrifice, through intentional choices. Second, Invest consistently, not occasionally. Consistency beats intensity. Third, increase your earning ability. Learn valuable skills. Look for opportunities to create additional income. Build assets that can grow over time. Fourth, avoid comparing yourself to others. Many people look wealthy online. Very few people show their debt, stress, or financial mistakes. Run your own race. And finally, stay patient, because patience is often the difference between people who build wealth and people who constantly chase shortcuts. Here's the truth. The first $100,000 is hard. Really hard. Not because the number itself is special, but because of who you have to become to reach it. You have to become disciplined when it's easier to spend. You have to stay consistent when results are invisible. You have to keep going when progress feels slow. You have to trust the process before the rewards arrive. And that's why so many people never make it. But for those who do, something incredible happens. They don't just gain money, they gain the habits, skills, mindset, and systems that create lasting wealth. And once those systems are in place, building the next $100,000 becomes much easier. Because the real achievement was never the money. It was the person you became while earning it.